I'm going to talk to all of you today about how we can leverage AI and simulations to transform business education. This is a lot of what my research is in, and I started using marketplace simulation years ago before I was at Ramapo College, actually. I was at Felician, and I've been using it ever since. Um, so I'm going to give you a practical guide, as Bethany said, that works for me. Here's just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. I'm just going to minimize there we go. Today we're going to be talking about the role of AI in simulations and business education in particular, uh, particularly in marketing, as employers are really looking for marketers to come out of school having some technical skill, but also still having those soft skills. Secondly, we're going to look at the effective use of AI in teaching strategies, particularly when we look at the flipped classroom learning model. Then we're going to look at innovative pedagogy and the power of simulations. And then I'm going to walk you through a practical guide on how you can scaffold and facilitate a simulation. So when we look at the role of AI and simulations in teaching, we can look at simulations and AI in business separately or together. When we look at AI in business education, what does it provide us? It provides us with personalized learning. It provides us with data-driven, the ability to make data-driven decision making, which develops that skill set in our students. There is on the instructor side some automated assessment that we could benefit from. And some of the other, I'm not going to go into this piece in a lot of detail because of some of our other speakers have already addressed some of these topics. But what I'm going to focus primarily on is how do you integrate this into your classroom and into your curriculum? There's clear benefits in experiential learning that helps students with their hard skills as well as their soft skills. For the student, the benefit is working together in teams. Now, I know some folks have said that they prefer individual simulation work, which that works as well. For the institution and for the faculty member, it's a matter of shifting the learning environment. And I know ever since COVID, many of us have probably dealt with this lack of engagement from students and trying to get students to actively engage in the classroom. And I have found ever since I've adopted marketplace simulation and incorporated more AI content in my classes, I have found the engagement in the classroom to be so much better. Students actually really look forward to coming to class, what I've seen in my evaluations. Um, they are being exposed to AI content in the classroom such as creating a buyer persona and using AI imaging to create that AI image of their buyer persona. And students had never seen that before. So having them play around with it in the classroom really helps them see what they're going to be doing when they get out into the workforce. There are obviously some challenges and things to consider. The main thing is faculty training and adoption, which is why I'm so excited to be a part of this conference where I'm taking notes on some tips that I'm learning as well. In my convening group, there are 6 of us marketing folks, and I'm one of the few that uses simulations. And the main reason is fear of adopting, not knowing how to use it, and just sticking with what they've done and what has worked in the past. So it is a challenge to take into account. And there are ways around it, such as coming on one of these conferences and working with your fellow colleagues. The cost. One of the reasons I adopted Marketplace was the cost was a benefit. I looked at so many different simulations and met with different reps when I first started teaching with simulations, and the cost was astronomical. I have found that the marketplace cost is within line for my students, and what I have tried to do is find a textbook or when I teach it in my advanced topics class, I use the Blue Ocean Strategy book, which is a $17 book that you can get from Amazon. So I try to couple the simulation with a lower cost book. Or if you have open resource, open source textbooks, that's another option as well. And I have yet to have a student not be able to participate in the marketplace simulation due to cost. So that's a benefit as well. Then when we look at bias and transparency and academic integrity, there are ways around that some of our other speakers have talked about, so I won't spend too much time on that. I'd rather get more into um, the meat and potatoes. So when we look at the flipped classroom model and how it can be enhanced by AI, when you're utilizing a flipped classroom model outside of the classroom, the students are engaging in all that complex content at their own pace. And there's so many tools that they can utilize to help them in their studying and their learning, such as I put here on my slide. They can look at Khan Academy, proprofs.com, study fetch. So whenever I have a midterm or quiz for students, I always say to them, it's not cheating to set up study guides for yourself and have them give you questions. That's active learning and utilizing AI as a learning support tool. So this way, when they come into the classroom, our focus shifts from lectures to collaborative discussion, reflection, strategy. I lecture no more than 20 minutes. Um, and why is that? In today's day, with students having less, or the generation having less and less attention span and interest in sitting in the classroom for hours at a time, their attention span, I find, is 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I hit the key highlights, and then we get right into our active engagement and collaborative work. And it keeps the class moving and it keeps discussion flowing. So that's one thing that works for me in this flip classroom model. And I actually had the benefit of partnering with John Bergman years ago in learning from him through faculty development training and then working with him on a publication. So I learned a lot of other techniques in flipped classroom learning that I'd be happy to share offline if anybody's interested. So let's get into simulations. Why do they work? They replicate, in the best case scenario, real world situations in a controlled, risk-free environment. As a marketing professor, I tell my students all the time, my job is not only to teach you the content, the strategy, how to think critically, how to analyze, be creative. But my job is also to help you market yourselves when you get out into the workforce. As a marketing professor, if I can't help you market yourself, then I find I'm not doing my job. And I find that simulations help students who struggle with getting internships, or maybe they're a student athlete, or maybe they have to work and they don't have time for an internship or something else in the field. And we also know how competitive it is. Simulations in the classroom provide a student that added advantage when they go out into the job market looking for a job and interviewing. I have had students come back and tell me, I talked about our marketplace simulation and our final project in my interview, and the interviewers were very impressed. So simulations give students not only the hard skills of learning how to do the marketing, it also gives them something to talk about in an interview that can really be a feather in their cap. It also transforms that passive learning into interactive, engaging experience. As I mentioned, they develop soft skills and hard skills. Um, so one of the biggest advantages is it AI proofs assignments. So I know I mentioned utilizing AI in the classroom, but utilizing AI as a supportive learning tool, not utilizing AI to submit an assignment. And so by virtue of using a simulation students are actively engaged and you're not worrying about as a faculty member, well, did ChatGPT write this? So it really helps bridge the gap between theory and practice. So let's get into my practical guide here and how I can help you scaffold. Just by, if I can see quickly, um, just by reactions or show of hands, how many of you have utilized any simulation or marketplace in particular more than once? Okay, great. All right, awesome. So we have, that's good. So when we look at scaffolding, one thing that I learned when I first started utilizing simulations was that I did not scaffold. I didn't peel the onion back well enough. And my first group of students were a little confused. And I owned that and said, okay, I'm learning as they are. So I created this little practical guide. When I utilize marketplace simulation, I have utilized it in intro to marketing, advanced topics, where I focus on a blue ocean strategy content, international marketing, marketing strategy, and I use a very similar format to what I have here on the board. When I like to introduce the content first. So the content that the theory, what we're going to be learning about, how it incorporates into the simulation. So the foundation is laid in the first 1 to 6 weeks. Introducing the theory, the concepts. I like to have students form teams of two, no more than three. It works on the soft skills that we talked about in leadership and teamwork. And I try to replicate a real world scenario as best as I can. So I say, this is your business. You have to work together as business people. You may not like how you may not think alike, but you have to figure out how you're going to be successful together. And the first 1 to 6 weeks, I also have them work through the content and the theory of the class. Then we get into phase two, which is where we get into the meat of the simulation. I usually start the simulation around week 5 or 6 of my class and carry it out for six, depending on the simulation, 6 to 8 weeks. And that's where I call it phase two is guided practice, where I break down the simulation into manageable chunks and I utilize, which I didn't do the first time, I utilize the micro simulations and the mini lessons, and they help students so much so that when they go to actually do the simulation, it's very fluid. And I tell the students, I am your business consultant, and so in my classes, we meet twice a week. One day is content theory discussion. And then day two, once we start the simulation, I usually teach on Friday. So I say, all right, it's Simulation Friday. Bring at least one person in the group should have some type of electronic device, which normally that is not a challenge in my classes. But if it is in any of yours, you can, I'm sure, make arrangements with your department chair or your dean. And I call it Simulation Fridays. Students on a Friday afternoon don't usually love coming to class, but when it's Simulation Fridays, I have always had almost 100% attendance. They love Simulation Fridays. I bring my laptop around and I say, I am your business consultant, and I go from group to group and say, all right, talk to me about what you're thinking. What are your challenges? I don't give them advice on what they should do, but I give them an advice on maybe you should look at this, or maybe you should open up your um, willingness to pay tab when you're looking at the data and the research, and I help them in that sense. And I truly act as a consultant, and then I walk away and I go to the next group. And I have found that doing that alleviates a lot of the anxiety for students, and they really feel like they are running their business. And I love hearing that there's so much chatter in the classroom. Um, Also, let me just take a step back. I used to, as I think one of the other speakers mentioned, have the students compete against the computer. I used to do that. And then my students in one of my classes says, why can't we compete against each other? Some students are very competitive. And I used to have them compete against the computer primarily for cost reasons. Just as I was starting out, I wanted to lower the barrier as much as possible to make sure that all students would participate, and it's a little bit more cost effective. But ever since I was asked that, I started having the students competing against each other, and the level of competition and excitement has increased even more since doing that. Then so what I have them do is simulation Fridays, and then each quarter is due that Sunday night by midnight. So they can make their decisions in class, but they have the weekend to think about it before they hit submit. And then phase three is what I call that professional bridge. This is where a lot of those soft skills are developed. So as part of their final capstone assignment in the class, they have to create board reports that then they present back to headquarters. And the team presents the board reports and they discuss, just like we all know as business faculty and business people, not every strategy is going to work. So, where are you going to assess what worked and what didn't work and report back to headquarters and what your future plans may look like? And this brings in the softer skills in terms of going back and putting together a creative presentation and speaking to what they put together and what worked, what didn't work, and how they would make shifts for the future. So these are the three phases that I've put together as a practical guide to helping any of you scaffold and facilitate. So we turn into true facilitators in the classroom. So what's the call to action? I'll leave you with this. Finding ways to have AI supported courses to boost your engagement and satisfaction amongst the students. That could be doing Kahoots. That could be offering different apps to help students prepare for exams. That could be incorporating AI imagery in the classroom. Number two, simulations. They offer AI-proof hands-on learning. Number three is the flipped classroom model. The flipped classroom model has been a game changer for me as a faculty member in terms of the amount of discussions that we're able to have now in the classroom. And then lastly, as I mentioned, our role shifts from lecturer to facilitator and business consultant. So the student is truly the center of the learning journey.